My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 31 years old, and if you saw me on an ordinary day, you'd probably think I had a normal, happy life. I worked as an office manager at a car dealership outside Columbus, Ohio. I lived in a small white house with a porch that always needed paint. I had a wife I loved more than anything, and for a long time, that felt like enough. Then our son was born, and every night after that, my wife cried. Before Noah came into our lives, Leah was the kind of person who made a house feel warm without even trying. She sang while folding laundry. She left little notes on the fridge in messy blue pen. She talked to our dog like he was a person and laughed at her own jokes before I even had time to understand them. She had this soft way of touching my arm when she wanted my attention, like she was afraid of asking for too much. When Leah got pregnant, she cried then too, but those were happy tears. We had been trying for almost 2 years, and after every negative test, I watched a little bit of hope leave her face. So when she stood in our bathroom one Saturday morning, holding that positive pregnancy test with both hands like it might disappear, I felt like I was watching a miracle. She laughed and cried at the same time. "Ethan," she whispered, "we're really having a baby." From that day on, Noah became the center of our world before he even took his first breath. Leah painted the nursery herself, even when I told her to let me do it. She chose a pale blue color and little cloud stickers for the walls. She spent hours folding tiny onesies and baby socks, smiling at things so small they could fit in my palm. At night, she would sit on the edge of our bed, one hand resting on her stomach, and talk to our son like he could already hear every word. "Your dad is going to spoil you," she'd say. "You already spoil him," I'd answer. She'd grin and say, "That's because he's my baby." Those were good days. Simple days. We went to doctor appointments, argued over stroller prices at Target, and laughed about how neither of us knew how to change a diaper. I thought the hard part would be the sleepless nights after the baby came. I thought if we loved each other enough, the rest would be easy. I was wrong. Leah went into labor on a cold Thursday in February, 3 weeks before her due date. At first, she tried to act calm, but by the time we got to the hospital, her hand was squeezing mine so hard I couldn't feel my fingers. The labor lasted almost 19 hours. 19 hours of pain, fear, nurses rushing in and out, machines beeping, and me standing there useless, whispering, "You're doing great," while Leah looked like she was being torn apart from the inside. Then something went wrong. I still remember the sudden change in the room, the nurse's face, the way more people rushed in, the way Leah's eyes found mine, wide with fear, as if she wanted me to promise her everything would be okay, and I couldn't. Noah was born healthy, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, a full head of dark hair. The doctor placed him in my arms, and for one perfect second, the world stopped. He was warm and tiny and real, and I loved him so fast it scared me. But when I looked at Leah, she wasn't smiling. She looked exhausted, pale, empty. I told myself it was the long labor, the blood loss, the pain. Anyone would look broken after a day like that. But even when we brought Noah home 2 days later, something in Leah still felt far away, like part of her had been left behind in that hospital room. The first week, I blamed exhaustion. Noah woke up every 2 hours, and neither of us knew what we were doing. Our house smelled like baby lotion, cold coffee, and dirty laundry. Leah barely slept. She moved through the day in oversized sweatshirts with her hair tied back, dark circles under her eyes, and that same tired smile that never quite reached her face. "You should sleep when he sleeps," I told her one afternoon. She nodded. "I know." But she never did. At night, I would wake up and find her in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair with Noah in her arms. Sometimes she was feeding him. Sometimes she was just staring at him in silence. And sometimes she was crying. Not loud crying. Not the kind that asks for comfort. Quiet crying. The kind a person does when they don't want anyone to hear. The first time I saw it, I stood in the doorway and asked, "Leah, what's wrong?" She wiped her face fast and forced a smile. "Nothing. I'm just tired." The second time, she said, "Go back to sleep, Ethan." The third time, she didn't answer at all. I kept telling myself this was normal, that all new mothers cried, that once Noah started sleeping longer, once Leah had more rest, once life settled down, everything would go back to the way it was. But deep down, I already knew something was wrong. One night, around 2 a.m, I woke up and saw her light on in the nursery again. I walked to the door quietly, not wanting to wake the baby. Leah was sitting in the rocking chair, holding Noah against her chest. Moonlight came through the window and fell across her face. Her cheeks were wet. Her shoulders shook with silent tears. She didn't know I was there. She lowered her face to Noah's tiny head and whispered, in a broken voice I had never heard before, "I'm sorry, I'm trying. I'm really trying." And in that moment, for the first time since our son was born, I felt something colder than fear. I felt helpless. After that night, I couldn't stop hearing Leah's voice in my head. "I'm sorry. I'm trying. I'm really trying." Those words followed me everywhere. While I brushed my teeth in this morning, while I sat at my desk at work pretending to answer emails, while I stood in line at the grocery store buying diapers and formula, I kept asking myself the same question over and over. What was she apologizing for? Leah loved Noah. I knew that. I saw it in the way she held him so carefully, like he was made of glass. I saw it in the way she checked if he was breathing every 10 minutes. I saw it in how fast she ran to him whenever he cried, even when she looked too tired to stand. But I also saw something else now. Something heavy sitting behind her eyes. Something I didn't know how to reach. So I tried to help the only ways I understood. I brought home her favorite blueberry muffins from the bakery near my office. I changed diapers before work. I cleaned bottles, folded laundry, and told her she was doing a great job. One evening, I even came home with yellow tulips, because Leah used to love fresh flowers in the kitchen. She looked at them for a second, smiled weakly and said, "They're beautiful." But she didn't put them in water. 2 days later, I found them still wrapped in paper on the counter, already starting to die. That scared me more than I wanted to admit. Leah had always noticed little things. She used to stop on the sidewalk just to look at someone's roses blooming in their yard. She once made me drive 20 minutes out of the way because she saw a roadside stand selling sunflowers. Flowers mattered to her. Beauty mattered to her. Now it was like she couldn't see any of it. She apologized all the time, too, and at first I barely noticed. It blended into the background of our days until it became impossible to ignore. Sorry, the kitchen's a mess. Sorry, I forgot to switch the laundry. Sorry, Noah was crying when you got home. Sorry, dinner's just frozen soup. Every apology came out of her mouth in this small, tired voice, like she was shrinking a little more each time she said it. One evening, I found her standing in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at herself. Noah was asleep in the bassinet in our room, and the house was quiet except for the dryer humming down the hall. Leah had one hand resting on the sink. Her hair was greasy and falling out of her ponytail. She was wearing one of my old t-shirts and a pair of gray sweatpants. I walked up behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist. "Hey," I said softly, "what are you doing?" She kept staring at her reflection. "I don't look like me anymore." I kissed the side of her head. "You just had a baby. You're tired." "No." Her voice cracked. "It's more than that." I turned her gently so she'd look at me, but she lowered her eyes. "I feel ugly," she whispered. "I feel empty." I wanted to say the right thing. I wanted to tell her she was still beautiful, still Leah, still the woman I loved. But all I could think was that I didn't understand how to fix this. So I said the stupidest thing possible. "You just need more rest." The second the words left my mouth, I saw the hurt in her face. Not anger, not even disappointment, just hurt. Like I had handed her something useless when she had been silently begging me for something real. She pulled away from me, walked into the bedroom, and picked up Noah before he could wake himself fully. I stood in the bathroom alone, staring at our reflections disappearing from the mirror, and hated how helpless I felt. A few days later, my mother came over. My mom, Diane, had always been the kind of woman who thought every problem could be solved by being tougher. She raised me and my younger sister mostly on her own after my dad left, and she wore that struggle like armor. She respected strength, discipline, routine. She didn't trust softness. At first, I thought having her around might help. She brought casseroles, folded towels, and told stories about when I was a baby. But it didn't take long for her help to turn into criticism. Leah was in the kitchen one afternoon, trying to warm a bottle while Noah cried in his swing. I had come home early from work and stopped in the hallway when I heard my mother speaking in that sharp, low voice she used when she thought she was giving advice. "In my day, women didn't sit around crying all the time after having a baby," she said. Leah didn't answer. Mom kept going. "A child needs a calm mother. If you keep acting like this, Noah will feel it." I stepped into the kitchen. "Mom, enough!" She looked at me like I was the rude one. "I'm just trying to help." Leah's face was pale. Her eyes were red, but she kept shaking the bottle like she hadn't heard any of it. Mom grabbed her purse from the chair. "Fine, next time I'll keep my mouth shut." Then she left. I should have gone after her. I should have told her not to come back until she could treat my wife with kindness. I should have defended Leah the way she deserved. But I didn't. And that night, Leah cried harder than ever. I found her in bed after Noah finally fell asleep, lying on her side with her back to me. Her shoulders were trembling under the blanket. I sat down beside her and touched her arm. "Leah," I whispered. "Talk to me." She wiped her face but didn't turn around. I swallowed hard. "Are you unhappy because of Noah?" The second I said it, I wanted to take it back. Leah rolled over slowly and stared at me like I had slapped her. "No," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm unhappy because I'm scared of myself." And for the first time, I realized this was bigger than sadness. Much bigger. I didn't sleep that night, even after Leah turned away from me and pretended to rest. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, hearing her words again and again. "I'm scared of myself." I had never heard my wife say anything like that before. Leah was the kind of person who apologized when someone else bumped into her at the grocery store. She cried at sad movies and worried too much, and always thought about everyone else first. But she had never sounded afraid of her own mind. And the truth was, I didn't know what to do with that kind of fear. The next morning, I called in late to work and made coffee neither of us drank. Leah sat at the kitchen table in silence, wearing Noah in a baby carrier against her chest. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. Her skin was pale, and there was a dull, distant look in her eyes that made my stomach hurt. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. "Leah," I said carefully, "when you said you're scared of yourself, what did you mean?" For a moment, she just stared at the steam rising from my coffee mug. Noah made a soft little sound in his sleep, and Leah's hand moved automatically to pat his back. Even broken, she still comforted him first. Then she whispered, "I don't feel normal." I leaned forward. "Talk to me." Her eyes filled with tears almost instantly, like the words had been waiting right behind them. "Some days I look at Noah and I love him so much I can't breathe," she said. "And then 5 minutes later, he starts crying and I feel this panic in my chest like I'm trapped. I want to run out of the room, and then I hate myself for even thinking that." Her voice cracked. "I'm his mother. What kind of mother wants to run away from her own baby?" "You're exhausted," I said quickly. "You've been through a lot." "Please don't do that." She looked up at me then, and the pain in her face made me stop talking. "Don't make this smaller than it is." I felt my throat tighten. Leah pressed both hands over her mouth for a second, trying to hold herself together. When she spoke again, her voice was trembling. "Sometimes I sit in the nursery and I feel nothing. Nothing, Ethan. I hold our son and I know I love him, but I can't feel it the way I'm supposed to. Then I start thinking maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm broken. Maybe he'd be better off with someone else." "No," I said immediately. "Don't say that." But I think it anyway. Tears were sliding down her cheeks now. "And at night it gets worse. When the house is quiet, my head gets loud. I keep hearing all these thoughts telling me I'm a bad mother, a bad wife, that I'm failing both of you. I'm scared to be alone with my own mind." I had never felt so ashamed in my life. All this time, I had been telling her to sleep more, to rest, to hang on a little longer, as if she was just tired, as if this was something a nap could fix. I moved my chair closer and took her hand. It was cold. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. And the second I said it, I hated myself again. because it sounded like blame when it should have been grief. Leah gave a sad little laugh that broke in the middle. I tried. That one sentence hit me harder than anything else. She was right. She had tried. In every quiet tear, every apology, every broken whisper in the nursery, she had been trying to tell me she was drowning. I just hadn't known how to hear it. I squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry," I said, my own eyes burning now. "Leah, I'm so sorry." She shook her head, like she didn't even have the energy to comfort me, and somehow that hurt even more. That evening, I took over everything I could. I fed Noah, changed him, walked him around the living room when he wouldn't settle. I told Leah to shower, then to sleep, then just to lie down even if she couldn't sleep. She nodded and thanked me in that same flat voice, but I could see it wasn't enough. She was still slipping somewhere I couldn't reach. Around 2 in the morning, Noah started crying again. I sat up, expecting Leah to already be out of bed like she always was. But her side of the mattress was empty. My chest tightened. I got up fast and checked the nursery first. Noah was still crying in his crib, red-faced and kicking under his swaddle, but Leah wasn't there. I checked the kitchen, the living room, the front porch. Then I saw a thin line of light under the bathroom door. I pushed it open and found Leah sitting on the floor in the dark, her knees pulled up to her chest, both hands covering her face. Her whole body was shaking. "Leah!" She looked up at me with eyes so full of fear it barely felt like she knew who I was. And in a voice so small, I almost didn't hear it, she whispered, "Noah deserves a better mother than me." In that moment, something inside me broke, because for the first time, I realized this wasn't just sadness. I could lose my wife, even if she was still sitting right in front of me. I dropped to the bathroom floor so fast, my knees hit the tile hard enough to hurt. "Leah!" I said, reaching for her. "Hey, look at me." She was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Her whole body shook under my hands. I had seen my wife tired, angry, stressed, heartbroken, but I had never seen her look this lost. It was like she was standing at the edge of something dark, and I had almost been too late to notice. "Noah deserves a better mother than me," she whispered again, staring at the floor. "He deserves someone who isn't broken." I took her face in both of my hands and forced her to look at me. "Listen to me," I said, my own voice shaking now. "You are not broken. You are sick, and I should have seen it sooner. I'm sorry, Leah. I'm so sorry." She closed her eyes and sobbed harder. I pulled her into my arms and held her there on the cold bathroom floor, while Noah cried in the other room and the rest of the house slept around us. For the first time since our son was born, I stopped trying to fix her with the wrong words. I stopped telling her to rest, or calm down, or wait for things to get better. I just held her and listened. Between shaky breaths, she told me everything she had been hiding. She told me how terrified she had been during labor, when the room filled with nurses, and she thought she might die before she even got to hold our son. She told me she felt guilty from the moment Noah was born because everyone expected her to glow with happiness. But all she felt was fear and emptiness. She told me some nights she sat in the nursery and imagined walking out the front door and never coming back. Not because she didn't love Noah, but because she was afraid she was ruining him just by being his mother. I love him so much, she cried into my shoulder. That's what makes it worse. I love him, Ethan. I love him. And I still feel like I'm failing him every second. You're not failing him, I whispered. You're surviving. And I'm done letting you do that alone. The next morning, I called my boss and told him I wouldn't be in. Then I called Leah's doctor, saying the words out loud. My wife had a baby 3 weeks ago and she's crying every night and says she's scared of herself, made the whole thing feel painfully real. The nurse on the phone didn't sound shocked. She sounded calm, kind, prepared. She told me Leah needed to be seen as soon as possible. That afternoon, I drove Leah to her appointment while Noah slept in the back seat. Leah barely spoke the whole way there. She kept looking out the window with that same exhausted, faraway expression, and I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other wrapped around her fingers, as if I could hold her here by touch alone. The doctor talked to Leah gently, asked careful questions, and by the end of the appointment, there was a name for what had been happening to her. Postpartum depression. I had heard the term before, of course, but hearing it attached to my wife felt like someone had finally turned on a light in a room we'd been stumbling through in the dark. It didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the pain or the guilt or the weeks she had suffered in silence. But it gave shape to the monster. It told us this wasn't weakness, and it wasn't failure, and it wasn't Leah being a bad mother. It was an illness, and illnesses can be treated. The doctor helped us make a plan: therapy, support, check-ins, sleep when we could get it, help from people who actually understood what Leah was carrying. Real help, not judgment, not silence. When we got home, my mother called. "I'm coming by with dinner," she said. I looked at Leah, asleep on the couch for the first time in days, Noah curled on my chest. Then I walked into the kitchen and lowered my voice. "No," I said. My mother went quiet. "Excuse me?" "Leah is sick," I said. "She doesn't need criticism, and she doesn't need pressure. She needs kindness. If you can't give her that, then you're not coming over." Mom was silent for so long, I thought she might hang up. Finally, she said, "I didn't know it was that bad." "You didn't ask," I replied. She didn't come over that night. The weeks after that were not magically easy. Leah didn't wake up one morning healed. Some nights she still cried. Some mornings she still looked at Noah with fear before love had time to reach her. But now I knew what to do. I got up for feedings. I changed diapers before work and after work. I sat beside Leah in the nursery when the dark thoughts came. I reminded her to eat. I reminded her to sleep. I reminded her over and over that our son did not need a perfect mother. He needed her. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, she started coming back. She laughed one afternoon when Noah sneezed milk all over my shirt. A real laugh, small, surprised, but real. Another day, I found her standing by the nursery window with Noah in her arms, humming softly to him. She was still tired, still healing, but the emptiness in her eyes wasn't as deep anymore. Then, one night, about 2 months after Noah was born, I woke up and looked toward the rocking chair in this nursery. Leah was there, asleep at last, with Noah resting safely against her chest. Her face was peaceful, no tears, No shaking shoulders, just quiet. I covered her with a blanket, kissed Noah's forehead, and stood there in the dark, listening to the silence. For weeks, I had fallen asleep to the sound of my wife crying. That night, for the first time since our son was born, I heard something else. Hope.